Hey everyone, James Labrie from Dream Theater, and you're listening to or watching the podcast Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian. Enjoy this. These guys are extremely informative. I love their dialogue. I love their interpretation of the songs, who and what we are, what we were going after. They're very accurate in their interpretations and descriptions, and I just think this is a great show, and these guys are doing a stand-up stellar job. So once again, enjoy Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Talking into Infinity, a Dream Theater podcast. I am your host, John. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the CMSnetwork.com. We are live right here at those four locations every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are watching on YouTube, please do not forget to click those like and subscribe buttons and hit that notification bell so that you get notified every time we go live. If you would like to find video replays of the show, just go to our YouTube channel or the YouTube channel of the CMS Network. And if you're looking for audio replays of the show, just Google Talking into Infinity Podcast. Without further ado, let me bring on my very good friend, my esteemed co-host, Mr. Brian Hendrickson. It's good to see you, man. We had a much-deserved show off, so it's been a month since we've done this. So it's good to be back and good to see you, man. I'm ready to talk some Van Halen tonight.
It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his chest in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass doors of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. I am super excited to talk about my favorite book of all time, of course, George Bradbury's 1984.
It's George Orwell, you idiot.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me. I'm not that up
Wow.
on science fiction stuff. So,
Way to go.
have you ever actually read 1984, the book?
I've read like 3/4 of it. I'm actually listening to it on audiobook as we speak.
Okay, so is it,
I'm familiar.
in fact, of course, we're talking about Van Halen's 1984 legendary album. Is there a lot of the type of the themes in the book in this album, or just not really at all? Do you think?
It's David Lee Roth. There could be any number of different themes. I mean, I guess the theme of Big Brother.
Yeah.
You know, the Ted Templeman kind of trying to exert, keep things under control during the making of the record. Maybe that is kind of a representation. I guess you could make that analogy there, but
Okay.
Well,
all goofing around aside, man, I'm super pumped for this show. This is something you talked about for a while.
Yep.
This is basically your musical hero, I guess is the best way to put it.
That's exactly how to put it.
Edward Van Halen. And the thing that struck me the most before we get into all this, 1984 as a year for music. Oh my God.
Well, before you give your list,
okay,
I'm going to toast Van Halen,
Let's
and then I want you to give your list. So
right.
as I warned you before we went on the air, I'm going to drink an entire bottle of Jack right here on the air to start the show. So I've got my entire bottle of Jack right here. So there we go. It's right on camera. There it is. So
I've got a fine Chardonnay here. This is one of those super expensive wines where you give them like 20 and you're lucky if you get 15 back. So let's
Yep. This is not iced tea. This is not iced tea, by the way, Brian. This is actual Jack Daniels.
Okay. Well, this is real wine too. So
there we go. Cheers, man. All right. So as you were saying, Jack is just not good. How do people drink that? Anyway,
so without making me do the math, how old were you in 1984?
I was 8 years old.
Okay, so a little bit prior to probably full-on rock, into all that kind of stuff, maybe just a little. So I was 16, and this was literally the prime of like getting my first big stereo and like getting my albums, getting my cassettes. CDs were not really a thing yet. And, what you couldn't buy or afford, you recorded off of friends,
Sure.
Either by album or cassette to cassette. So 1984, Ride the Lightning.
Got to start there.
I mean, oh my God. Love at First Sting.
Great Scorpions record.
I want to say something about Love at First Sting. I think, and I don't know how to phrase this exactly, but I think Love at First Sting and Back in Black might be the two greatest rock albums of all time that don't have the word Van Halen associated with it.
Appetite for Destruction, I'm going to put in there.
Okay, I'll buy that. But let's say like most important, maybe even.
Yes, that I would agree with.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those albums that you just kind of forget about, and you're like, holy crap. Okay, so Last in Line.
Okay.
We just saw that Dio documentary, which maybe we could talk about that later at the end.
Yeah.
Yngwie's first album, Rising Force. That was our introduction, my introduction to Jeff Scott Soto. Incredible.
Yep.
What I consider to be Judas Priest's greatest opus, Defenders of the Faith. They were at their peak then. It's just a giant molten slab of metal and hits on there. I mean, every song is just a hit.
Sure.
Queensryche, The Warning.
Very
Power
good.
Slave, Iron Maiden. I mean, is this all ridiculous or what? Like,
God bless, man. You weren't kidding.
I kind of had a feeling. Tooth and Nail, Dokken. I think.
Wow. Okay, another one.
Yeah, I mean the one that really put them on the map, right? Triumph, Thunder 7, an underrated album in my opinion. I don't know, you're probably not that much of a Triumph fan, but the debut of one of my favorite bands that never gets any credit, TNT, Knights of the New Thunder. Love that album.
Okay.
I'll try to speed up here. Perfect Strangers, Deep Purple. I think the last good album that they ever did. I mean, they put out an album every 3 years now. This just sounds like old Deep Purple,
Okay.
Kiss, Animalize, which I would argue is probably my favorite of the non-makeup albums.
Okay.
End on those.
That's a good record.
One of my favorite bands that no one cares about, Autograph, Sign In Please. I loved all the synth stuff on that. It's the one that had Turn Up the Radio.
Okay.
Rush, Grace Under Pressure, and we'll finish up with Metal Church debut. Loved it. And Rat, of course, Out of the Cellar.
Oh, that's a great record.
Like just a ridiculous, like 5 of the best albums of arguably all of those bands on there. I mean, 1984. Like what was in the air? What was in the water? What was going on? And I don't know.
A lot of cocaine.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's funny. Like, my wife and I always talk about the fact we're like, man, we were born a decade too late. And, I would have been 18 in 1984. Like, what an age to be, with all that stuff coming out. Could you imagine? So, I mean, all that stuff is just so solid. And I think it was like, you're a few years into the 80s, so that vibe is kind of taken over. It's the party decade and, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and everyone was just kind of going for it. And I think you can kind of see that in a lot of the music coming out in that decade. And like you said, 1984 specifically, which, we're going to get into here tonight. God damn. I mean, we've done the shows before where, we're like, okay, it's such and such a year when Dream Theater put a record out. You can't have Dream Theater. What records are you picking instead? And there's going to be a few years where it's like a barren landscape of things to choose from. If we had to do 1984, holy crap. it'd be like, okay, what do I leave off the list? It would be really tough, man. So, yeah, super creative year, and the perfect landscape for, the 1984 record that we're going to dig into. So, show note, I may do a separate broadcast after this. I was trying to see if I could upload a video that I made 2 years ago to the day. It was, man, I'll never forget where I was 2 years ago today. Obviously, for those of you who don't know, today's the 2-year anniversary of Eddie Van Halen passing. And I was at work, and this is our busy season. We're just absolutely slammed. And I had my phone in my desk, So I was ignoring it because we had so much going on, and it was about 4:15, and I opened my desk drawer, take a look at my phone, and I see I have 48 missed text messages. I'm like, what the hell? So I open it up, and the first word that pops up in like the preview is Eddie, and the next one Eddie. I went, oh no. So sure enough, I Google Eddie Van Halen, and first thing pops up, Eddie Van Halen dead at 65, and I was just like, oh my God. So I had a hard time responding to all the text messages. I was getting phone calls. For those of you guys that don't know, like, I love Dream Theater, but they are my second favorite band. Van Halen to me is religion, and Eddie Van Halen specifically, as Brian said, he is my hero. And anybody who knows me really well, the joke is John doesn't like anything unless it starts with Van and ends with theater. So that's how much I love Van Halen and Dream Theater. But so many people were asking me to talk and stuff like that and do, just like, how you feeling? Like, what are you thinking? And, man, I just couldn't catch up with it. So I went on Facebook and I did a live video, and it's like 28 minutes long or something. I just poured my heart out, all my stories and how I was feeling. It's pretty weepy, not going to lie. And I downloaded it to play on the show, but the file's too large to play. So I think I might do a broadcast after this and just play that for anybody that wants to see that, because I have had some messages and emails like, hey, man, what are you thinking about, Eddie's passing today? So I was going to do it at the end of this show, but it's too big to play. But, yeah, Eddie Van Halen is the roadmap to everything where I'm concerned. So this is an episode I've really been looking forward to. I wish it was under better circumstances, obviously. Today is a day that's never not going to suck. I was talking to my guitar players today, and I said, happy it should have been Ted Nugent Day, because I absolutely hate Ted Nugent. I'm like, how is the world fair when Eddie Van Halen's gone, but Ted Nugent is still here spewing his bullshit? So try to make light of things there. But, yeah, I've really been looking forward to this, Brian, because this is not only a fantastic record, but I think it's, I think creatively this might be Eddie Van Halen's peak, and I do have that slight preference for the Sammy Hagar stuff. But that being said, I think when you really dig into 1984, especially the circumstances behind it, I think it might be Eddie Van Halen's creative peak in a way. And that's not saying everything else sucked. It's just saying that this is just at a level he had never been to, and probably didn't quite achieve after. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I was curious where I know you're always like, I don't think I can rank the Van Halen albums.
Yeah.
But creative peak, yeah. I mean, this is when, their sound kind of, well, obviously when Sammy came in, it evolved and changed too. But I just think the adding of the keyboards, and being a keyboard player, I'm always going to probably say that. But I just love the keyboards on this album. I think they just add so much. It was a much needed thing. And it's not done in a like, hey, we're chasing new wave or something like that type of a way. I don't think at all. It's just like, hey, I can play keyboards. I can come with some killer ways to fill these songs out, and just some awesome progressions and some great sounds. And I just think it adds so much to their, to their entire thing. And like, I really feel like it's a culmination of, I don't know how much more of like the inner turmoil was while this was being recorded, or if most of that was like after. But the performances on this are just amazing, man. I mean, the drums, like I've long been on record that Eddie Van Halen's guitar alone does not make up this band. You have to have Alex's drumming, and you have to have that splashy kind of hi-hat thing he gets. The cymbals are everywhere. The cymbals are like, I had a remastered version I was listening to, and you're like, man, there's so many cymbals going on.
Yeah.
But they need to be there, because that's part of their sound, like that, and the super awesome, choruses with the harmonies and the gang vocals with, Alex and Eddie and Michael rather, and Eddie. And it's just like, I don't know, man, it's a band I'm glad they went out this way with that lineup. You know what I mean? Rather than dive down. Like, I've had a new appreciation for some of the not quote B-sides, but at least not the cover stuff or the more obscure stuff on Diver Down. But I'm glad they did not go out on that note.
Right.
I mean, like, this is just, I don't know, man. This, listening back to this again, I was just like, especially the stuff that doesn't get played on the radio or the non-hits on this are just incredible.
Yeah, I think this has some of the most underrated stuff that they have ever done, personally. The album hallmarks are obviously Jump, Panama, and Hot for Teacher, but it's amazing how good the rest of the stuff on the record is. And it to me, it's almost like if you put most of the rest of the record, if not all the record, on some of the previous ones, they would be hits themselves. So, I mean, it's unbelievable how good this is. And this was a blast for me to dig into this record again, because I've been listening to it, like crazy the last couple days, because obviously I know it front and back. This is literally the most influential record of my life. That's why we're talking about it. And I'll tell Van Halen stories later after we dig in. But that having been said, it's still, knowing it like I do, digging back into it, there's so many things that you don't really notice unless you're really digging in to hear them. And I think this is the most sophisticated David Lee Roth record for sure. And we'll get to that as we dig into it song by song. But yeah, this is, and you're what, like 7-8 years older than I am. So if I was 8, you were what, like 15, something like that in 1984?
16 at the very end, December. So
okay. So, by the way, guys, if you want to be a part of the show, just jump in the chat, give us your thoughts, throw any questions out there. We are live on Facebook and YouTube, so feel free to jump in and be a part of the show with us. What was this your introduction to Van Halen, or had you already kind of listened to the previous 5 records? Were you aware of them? Were you a fan? And I asked that for a specific reason.
No, I got introduced, I guess, at 14, so roughly 2 to 3 years earlier.
Okay.
The first album, my cousin had it, and I think I told the story before. He had his headphones on, listening on those giant console things that were like 10 feet long, with the record. He had the headphones in there, and he's like, "Oh, Jamie's crying," and I'm like, "What the heck are you listening to?" And he put it on, and I heard this guitar going, where? I'm like, I never heard a guitar or anything do anything like that before. Yeah. That was crazy. And so, big fan of the first album. And then when I joined the Columbia Record and Tape Club, one of the albums I got was, I'm drawing a blank now, Unchained.
Fair Warning.
Sorry, senior moment there. Fair Warning. I just, at that beginning for me, the beginning of Mean Street, it's just like, oh my God, this is so
yeah.
Dirty Movies. I mean, everything on there was so damn good. So I was a huge fan. And then like I said, and then Diver Down came out, and I'm like, what is this? Like,
yeah.
I was like, I don't want to hear them singing Pretty Woman. That's pretty stupid. And I really never listened to anything else on that album, honestly, till probably later. But I remember first time I heard Jump, I was like, wait, they got keyboards now? I was just like, I thought it sounded awesome. But we'll get into the songs too. But yeah, I mean, it definitely was. I understand you're saying. I think it was a very mature David Lee Roth, which is funny because I guess the band probably didn't think he was so mature, which is why he ended up leaving and everything. But yeah, their performances on this are just. So did Ted? Let me ask you a question. Ted Templeman, did he produce any of the Sammy stuff, or was he strictly the DLR?
No, it was strictly the DLR stuff. He did help at the end of For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, because they were working with Andy Johns, who did all that Zeppelin stuff. And Andy was such a disaster. Like, him and Eddie Van Halen were basically just drinking buddies. So Sammy Hagar called Ted Templeman to come in and kind of like get him, drag him across the finish line. So he did help with one of the Sammy records, but that was the extent of his involvement with those. I know that, Ted Templeman's book is really good if you haven't read it. I actually listened back to the chapter about 1984 today. And, man, it was, I'm telling you, like, I read anything and everything I possibly can about Van Halen. And that some of the stuff that Ted Templeman was talking about in relation to the making of this record was just, I don't know how this record even got made. So, yeah, it's crazy, man. So why don't we dig into this? We'll go track by track. We'll start right there with the intro track. It's short, but I think it's worth talking about for a second because it's always fascinated me as I've come to know the band and their fans more and more as the years have gone by. I really wonder what the initial reaction was when people are, coming off a Diver Down, which is, granted it's, cover heavy, but I don't know how many people knew that at the time because there wasn't like Blabbermouth and Google and all that to find that out. And they're, Fair Warning and Van Halen 2 and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, they run out to grab the new Van Halen record and it's this synthesizer thing. And I was like, I know when I first heard it when I was 8 years old, like I saw Van on the cover and I thought, oh man, like Ludwig van Beethoven, this crap my dad listens to. I hate music, but I had nothing else to do. And when it came on and I heard the synthesizer intro, I was like, this is like that Mannheim Steamroller stuff. Like, all right, I guess this is kind of cool. So,
Mannheim Steamroller reference. I didn't think we'd get that on here.
One of the few things I know that's a little bit cultured.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, what was your reaction when you first heard like a this weird keyboard intro? Because it's Van Halen. I mean, you're expecting roaring guitars, just pounding drums, and you get this synth track for a minute and a half. So what was your reaction to this?
I thought it was sweet as hell. It's like, especially being a keyboard player.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the year that my dad bought me my first synthesizer. Also, 84, yeah, and it really reminded me of Rush, to be honest. Kind of how they use synths, just sort of to fill things up and stuff. And being a huge Rush fan, I was like, man, these guys are like, they're like really getting like nerdy now or something. I don't know if that's the word I'd use, but yeah, I thought it was really cool. I mean, and kind of listening back now, hearing it's like, I don't know, it's something that I guess anyone could probably go program in 5 seconds now, but it's kind of easy saying that in hindsight,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just a cool way to segue into Jump, I guess. And I don't know, it sort of just signals, like you said, that this is not going to be a normal Van Halen album.
Yeah.
Right off the bat.
Yeah, I just always thought it was a really interesting choice to open up with that. And I think, for me, the 1984 record is a statement of intent by Eddie Van Halen on all levels. And I think opening up with a synth track is him going, fuck you, I'm going to do the record I want to do how I want to do it. You don't have your Eruption, your Spanish Fly, Cathedral, stuff like that. The tapping intro to Mean Streets. It's this, ambient, atmospheric, kind of ethereal keyboard intro, and you're like, what the hell? But like you said, it's a great lead into Jump, which, again, is a song that I wonder about. Hardcore fans of the first 5 records, they hear the synth intro, and then all of a sudden Jump kicks in, and they hear more keyboards, and they're going, what the hell is going on here? Like, that had to have been something that was really jarring. I mean, how do you think it was received?
I honestly don't know because, I wasn't, as much as I liked Van Halen, then I wasn't, 26 years old and been there since 77, seeing them live and, that the 17-year-olds or 18-year-olds were then or whatever. So I'm curious. I mean, I'm guessing probably wasn't all that well received. I don't know. I mean, the thing only went on to sell 8 zillion albums, so I'm guessing the hardcore fans still were plenty on board. I mean, because once you finally get to the guitar solo, you're like, oh yeah, that's Van Halen, all right,
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I noticed about it is I imagine the hardcore fans going, what the hell? I mean, if I've got my timeline down, I think they released Jump like 3 weeks before the album hit, so people had heard Jump, so they knew it was coming. But
yep.
for them to hear keyboards in a Van Halen song, it's got to be like, what is going on? But then the guitar solo comes in and they're like, oh, there it is. Like, it's almost like a, that sigh of relief that we're not just getting Eddie Van Halen playing keyboards for, an entire record. And it's funny because the song that Ted Templeman harps on the most in his book is Jump. And he talks about the fact that he was not into it. It just didn't ever grab him. And then, even after the record was out and everything, he's like, yeah, it's, to this day, still, I'm not the biggest fan of Jump. And to me, that is completely ridiculous. I don't understand. I mean, he talks about the fact that he was waiting for that monstrous roaring Van Halen that everyone had come to know and love. But Jump is an undeniable song. I mean, how you can't just tap your feet and get into that and just, groove to it, I don't understand. I mean, you got to have a really biased sort of outlook towards the rest of the Van Halen catalog to say, yeah, Jump there.
I don't know. I can see both sides of it, because if you really just isolate it and you just listen to that keyboard going down, 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 we already know and love it. But then it's like, if you're used to everything else and you just isolate and that's all you hear, you're probably like, this is silly. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm trying to see a devil's advocate here. You know what I mean?
Okay. All right.
Like I don't know, just an L, and then Dave's like jumping off of the riser, doing his splits and literally jumping and all this and that. I don't know. Like, well, I don't know if there's any truth. The song used to be called Leap, but they like that just didn't sound good lyrically.
Here we go. It was spring, but hop.
Yeah.
Might as well hop. And backing vocals were very bored. Hop.
No, but like, in all seriousness, so can you think of another song that does what this does, which is the outro ends up being standing on top of the world? Like, I'm trying to think of any other band that did something like that actually, I'm not going to count Metallica doing 17 Unforgivens. Right. I had one other. Well, I was thinking like Mindcrime, because they did Mindcrime too, but that doesn't make any sense either.
Yeah, I can't really think of one. And I mean, the most interesting thing about that is, he does the riff literally one time through. I mean, the guitar part that rides out Jump is dun 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 dun, and one time it goes dun 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 dun. So it's literally once, and he ended up building, the whole riff for Top of the World, closing track on For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge out of it. So, yeah. So
I think the closest I came to, honestly, was sorry to interrupt you there, was actually Bon Jovi. It's My Life. They do sort of the callback to this one's for Tommy and Gina, who never look back or whatever. It's kind of a callback to Living on a Prayer, but it's really like lyrically.
Oh, okay.
But in the musically, it's I think, I can't remember if they almost do a bit of the progression there, but yeah, there's literally, I've never heard this done like this where, and like you said, it's only one small section and boom, we got another song out. So I think it's really cool and unique in that sense.
Yeah. So Cale McLeish says, we were talking about the intros. He says, you say that, but Intruder, and there was an instrumental intro on Fair Warning too. No, I mean, you're right. And Cale, but the thing of it is, though, we're talking about the fact that, with Jump and with 1984, specifically Jump, it was really poppy. It was very different. Intruder was kind of menacing a little bit, and when you're talking about an instrumental intro on Fair Warning, if you're talking about the tapping part going into Mean Streets, I mean, that's just a guitar thing. But I mean, or if you're talking about Sunday Afternoon in the Park, that's just down and dirty. So that's different. This was, those were still in the Van Halen vibe. That was still in the realm of what people were expecting. This, Jump and the intro synth track 1984 were not that. So, but yeah, and have you ever gone on YouTube and listened to the actual? There's a long interview with Eddie Van Halen out there that he's actually playing this in the background. You can hear him working on it. Like he's like, oh, I just worked this up, and it's all the little parts to Jump. It's cool, and it's interesting because some of the stuff like in the bridge that he does on this song, those chords are weird. And to your point about Alex Van Halen, under the solo, it's like ga 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 boom da doom doom. He's doing all this wonky stuff. And it always makes me think of something that Sammy Hagar said in his autobiography, which I highly recommend if you guys haven't read it. It's one of the best musician autobiographies I've ever read.
Yep.
He says that Alex wasn't as cool of a drummer after he got sober. He said when he was drunk, he'd do all these weird fills and weird stuff like that. And he said it was really cool. And I think that's on full display here on 1984 because he does some crazy stuff, and his right hand is really working overtime on a lot of material. But you get that right away in the bridge and the solo section of Jump. And I think that's what kind of grounds the song in that, okay, this is still a Van Halen record because you've got that poppy keyboard riff, but then you do have Eddie's, guitar solo. Then you've got like a keyboard solo. So if you got, Alex Van Halen doing some crazy drum stuff. So I just think it's a fantastic song that's so well put together. And it's like, okay, yeah, we're doing something different, but don't worry, it's still Van Halen. Like,
well, correct me if I'm wrong too. Didn't Alex Van Halen, wasn't he similar to Eddie in that he custom made almost all of his drum setups and heads and everything?
I don't know the setups he kind of worked with. I don't know about the heads and stuff, but I mean on this record, I mean, he was using electronic drums. He was using a Simmons kit.
Oh, was he? I guess.
Yeah, that's what Ted Templeman said, and it was because, this was when 5150 had just been finished, and they couldn't get like a natural drum sound because the room was just too small at the time. So to keep things from bleeding and stuff, he worked up a Simmons kit. So,
That's
all right, here we go. Yep. So our T-Bone drum covers. Good to see you, man. Our buddy Tommy. He says, hey, guys, there's a video on YouTube where someone removed the guitar from Jump and it's just the keyboard. It's the weirdest effing thing I've ever heard. Yeah, dude, it's everyone that thinks it's like this simple little poppy thing, but Eddie plays some really wonky stuff in here. It's really cool. So if you guys haven't seen that, definitely go check that out. All right, man. Well, let's get into where the record really kicks in and people kind of breathe that sigh of relief and go, oh, my God, this is a Van Halen record. A song that Eddie Van Halen said he was trying to do his version of an AC/DC song, Panama. I don't know about you, Brian. Have you ever heard an AC/DC song kick as much ass as Panama? I haven't.
What's funny, though? I immediately think of Shoot to Thrill almost. It has a little bit of that vibe. It's like Shoot to Thrill on acid and speed, I think.
Okay.
But I can see that vibe. Yeah, and Panama, man. Well, let's talk, too, about... So nobody really knew. I don't remember. Was there videos for Pretty Woman?
That was the only one. They had like promotional videos. I mean, if you look it up online. But in terms of like MTV, the first one that people really knew them by was that really crazy one. It was like basically like a concept video for Pretty Woman where they were each a different character and stuff.
Okay, yeah, but so it's like when you finally get to Jump in Panama, you actually kind of get to see them, even though they're not really playing, but you actually get to see Eddie playing and those guys all playing, and that's no one had, unless you'd ever seen them live. It's not like nowadays where you just go on YouTube, everyone's got a concert, but unless you'd seen them in a concert, like you never really saw them before. And I think the videos, if it wasn't for MTV, I don't know how big this album probably would have sold 3 million. I don't know if it would have sold, was it 5 it's at now? Or is it even more than that? I'm not sure.
1984?
Yes.
Oh my God, do your research, dude. It's Diamond Plus. The
Oh,
David
okay.
Lee Roth era is bookended with Diamond Records. Van Halen won in 1984.
That's 10.
Yes.
Okay.
How do I know something more than you know?
I don't know. I never
in the
heard
industry.
that before. I heard Platinum. So.
Wow. Okay.
The only album I ever made with triple plywood, so
Nice.
one copy.
JG3's checking in, says, what's up, guys? Good to see you, Jay. And not at the end of the show this time. Very nice. He says, hey, Van Halen, they're pretty good. Yeah, a little bit, They're all right.
Okay, so back to my point. So 10 million without video. What do you think? 6? I don't know. Because that was just such a driver in album sales in those days. We know that. That's undeniable.
I think that's fair because I know that, and honestly, I had the experience myself. I discovered music because of Van Halen, really. And I absolutely devoured this album. And Panama was when I discovered electric guitar. I went, because when I heard the solo to Jump, I was like, what is that? Oh my God, what is that sound? And then when Panama kicks in and it's nothing but that sound, I was like, I mean, my head just exploded. So I was just addicted to, Eddie Van Halen and his guitar playing. And when we had just gotten cable a couple months later, and we turned it on, and I turned on MTV because all my friends had it, and they were saying, oh, the videos are cool, this, that, and the other. And honest to God, the very first video that pops up when I turn on MTV is frickin' Panama. And, the biplane comes flying in, and then the band starts playing, and I see Eddie Van Halen, and I'm going, that's what he looks like. And I saw like the Frankenstrat guitar. I was like, oh my God. So like I loved the music before that, but then when I actually saw what they were doing, what they looked like, I'm like, this is the coolest fucking thing I have ever seen in my life. So yeah, I think your point is an astute one, man. I mean the album is strong enough to still sell a shitload of copies, but I definitely think that MTV played a large role in that, especially, our buddy Joseph Friend, Discuss Metal Joe. He says, Jump had a video before Panama, right? Yes, it was Jump, then Panama, then Hot for Teacher. And those videos are all great. I mean, you still go back and watch them, especially by the time you get to Hot for Teacher and, the whole, Waldo getting on the bus and all that stuff. All right, Wolf of Nature says, mispronouncing Panama is driving me nuts. That's you, isn't it, you dickhead?
No, it's not me.
Are you sure? Because you were making fun of that earlier. But yeah, so back to Panama. I mean, this song,
is he saying it's supposed to be Panama or it's supposed to be Panama?
I do not know. Wolf of Nature, you're gonna
I know this much, I don't care. I was joking around earlier when I said Panama.
Yeah. But JG3 says, actually caught the show on time. I got into music when I was 10 or so by listening to my dad's CD collection. I remember 1984 being one of my early favorites. Still love it to this day. Nice. That's
that's for sure.
I know. Yeah, this is the record that it's the most influential in my life, man. My life took a complete fork in the road when I heard this, in every respect. So, Wolf of Nature says Brian is correct. What like Panama?
Panama. The way that they sing it, you're saying Panama. Like enema. It's kind of how it sounds like you're saying it.
Are we going to nitpick this shit seriously?
I don't care. It doesn't sound as pronounced as he's making it sound, but I guess I understand his point.
I mean, Wolf of Nature, I know you're correct, but I can't be like, when you listen to that Panama song, like, I can't. I'm just speaking conversationally.
Is it guitar or cutter? It's supposed to be cutter, but now everyone's still saying it because of guitar, so I'm confused.
But yeah, I mean, dude, one thing about Panama that it's been an interesting point to me. Look, I don't care. Is
how many
this
of
song
Jack Daniel's bottles, even though they were this big, did you drink?
We're not going to get into it because it's going to totally derail everything. Okay, believe me.
Guarantee it's more than 3.
Oh my, dude, seriously.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. See, Kale says John is right in the conversationalist sense. Yes. There you go.
Great.
Thank you, Kale.
An Austrian. Come on.
Look at you, idiot. So, has Panama ever sounded heavier than it does on the record? I think it has not. And I've never heard a song that's like that. Usually the album versions, the live versions are either equivalent to or heavier than their album counterparts. This song, I have never heard it as heavy as it is on the record. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime performance.
Well, I've only saw them one time, and it was with Sammy, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I can understand what you're saying. There's like I always like the term immediacy. There's an immediacy to it that jumps off the vinyl, I think. Because kind of like live, you can sort of drag it out and stuff. But when you do that, I think you take away the heaviness of it. Almost like what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, do you follow me?
I totally do. I totally do. And that's, you know, I mean, to your point about the Sammy stuff, you know, he I'm reading comments here. The guys played it on the live Sammy record, but it is a little sped up, and it's tuned up a little bit, and it doesn't have that power. And even seeing the song multiple times on the Roth tours that I saw, it doesn't hit as hard. I mean, it's still a phenomenal song. I'm not saying it's not as good. It's still a great song. It's just not as heavy. So that's always been really interesting to me. But the other thing that's cool to me about this song is that, like, very, very few times in rock do you have a case where you're singing the chorus, but you're also singing the guitar solo. You know, like, I think most of us, especially those of us that play an instrument, you can. I mean, the chorus is duh. It's Panama, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, people know that guitar solo. They know the little parts and everything. Like, like, you know, that's coming and stuff. You know, I mean, that is such a rarity, and it's incredible how that came out. I mean, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, that's a master clinic in. It's hard to call it a guitar solo because I think the beginning is a guitar solo. The end is like a musical bridge or something, or it's an extra part, whatever. Because it's so musical and it's so, like you said, it's so melodic. And you know, it's just not too many people that can pull that off. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, Eddie's one of. I was thinking of like maybe the solo for like Photograph. You know, you sort of hum that one and know that one. We were talking about Rat earlier, like Round and Round. You sort of know the you know, you can kind of
the harmony part.
But what you're talking about is something different because it's kind of just the guitar sort of doing its own new riffs that are not sort of and I'm not saying noodling in a negative way, but more of the wheedly wee part, like you're saying, like that whole little sequence there is just amazing. And I think that adds to what you're saying about the heaviness, because when they play it live, or when any band plays it live, they milk all that crap out for another 2-3 minutes, get people singing along, whatever, this and that, get people clapping and this and that kind of thing. And when the immediacy just slams you in the face on the studio album and it does what it does, it's pretty special.
Yep. And the other thing about this one, and again, back to your point about Alex Van Halen's drumming, you know, his grooves sound so simple, but they can be difficult to recreate. I know that, you know, we play it in my cover band, and you know, our drummer, he's a fantastic drummer, but that groove, it's just, there's something missing. It's something that Alex he had that swing to it, and for something that sounds so simple, it's difficult to recreate, man. And it just adds this little layer that you don't really think of, because it's just a simple boom, bah, boom, bah, you know, kind of, you know, four on the floor type of a just pounding drum beat.
Yeah, I think it's his hi-hat playing. I mean, he does, and I'm horrible at describing, you know, what drums do and stuff, but I just know when I hear something and I'm like, okay, that's, you know, it's kind of when you see something and you're like, I know what this is. I don't really know how to say it, but it's like, I don't know. There, like you said, there's a swing. There's a way he plays hi-hats. There's a way he does accents, and it's not your standard thing. It definitely gives it a swing. I think that's a good point.
Yeah. And you know, this song to me is, I mean, it sounds stupid, but it is the gateway Van Halen song. It's got all the hallmarks. If you want to, you know, tell people, especially of a David Lee Roth song, like, what is Van Halen? Oh, well, Van Halen's kick-ass drums and just the guitars, like, just screaming, and, you know, the bass is thumping, and you could sing along to it, and, you know, you want to rock, and it's a total party tune. Like, this is like the David Lee Roth Van Halen sound, you know, encapsulated in, you know, 3 minutes or however long, you know, the song is. Poor Joseph Wren. He mistyped harmonics as harmonica in the chat, and I was catching crap. It's like, you don't remember the harmonica solo in Panama? Wolf of Nature brings up a very good point. He says, Alex Van Halen is beyond underrated. Mikey's voice is just as crucial to the overall sound of this band. Excellent, excellent point. And anybody worth their Van Halen salt would completely agree with you. The Michael Anthony harmonies are just absolutely, you gotta have them. You just have to have them. It was cool that Wolfgang could recreate them on those Roth tours. I'm glad that he's got his own record out now, so that we all can put that whole it was tracks, put that crap to bed. We now know it was definitely Wolfgang singing, so that was good.
There's a good point by Discuss Metal Joe. Alex plays slightly behind the beat. Okay, that's what I was curious of. I'm always get those mixed up if it's ahead or behind. But yeah, behind I think gives it the sort of the lazier, swing type of a feel to it.
Yep. It says Alex plays slightly behind the beat. Usually it's not a good thing, but when this band does it, there's a groove you cannot match. Yeah, completely agree. And especially, Eddie's not usually like chugging and down picking and stuff like that. A lot of, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, like in some of the boogie stuff, Eddie's not going along with the drums. Like the drums are, and Eddie's kind of like holding chords out and just, he's playing the slow stuff, and it just makes it move. Oh my God. It just makes it move.
So without getting crucified, what is this song actually about? Because I have no idea. Is it about a chick? Is it about a car? Or is it about like the experience of just driving or something? Or what?
Supposedly it's about a car.
Okay.
But
So
Ted Templeman says that it could be construed as other things. And, he's of the opinion that that's one of the, part of the brilliance of Dave's abilities as a lyricist is that, what's it about? It could be this, it could be that, it could be this. So yeah, but he said it's about a car. So it also could be construed as being about a woman, obviously.
And to clarify, I honestly don't know the answer to this. You're the Van Halen guy. Did DLR write all of the lyrics?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he came up with all the song titles, all the lyrics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So all right, well, let's move on to the next track, which this one's for you, Kale. JG3. It's about a gleaming red barchetta. Nice. Was that before or after the motor law?
Yeah.
So this is for you, Kale, because I think you and I are going to completely agree on this. We are now onto one of the single most underrated Van Halen songs ever recorded, Top Jimmy. I absolutely love this song, and it never gets talked about. It is just, oh my God, this song rules. I re-listen to this song several times a week, all the time. I just think this song kicks ass, and it's, again, it's interesting how this record flows, because this is, now the fourth track. So you've got the intro track is the synth track, then you've got the poppy keyboard stuff of Jump, then you got the heavy guitar stuff. Okay, here's the regular Van Halen sound with Panama, but now you get into this one, which is kind of like a more up-tempo, but it's like a clean channel, kind of jangly in a way. It's, so you've had several different flavors already on this album, and you've only gotten technically 3 full songs into it. So, it's fascinating, the amount of stuff that's crammed into this record. And I've always loved his use of the Ripley guitar on this one. And I'm sure if you guys have read about it, you've heard that it was a prototype guitar where you could pan each string individually. And he had it set to where it was like, everything was panned to either side, so each string. So when you're listening to it in headphones, it sounds like it's like left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And it's like it's ping-ponging in your ears, and you don't really notice it unless you're listening for it. But man, it is such a cool thing once you know what you're listening to. And I just love it. The song grooves, and I love how the whole song is like this upbeat, like jamming kind of groove, Brian. But then you get to the solo, and it breaks down to halftime, and it's just heavy and dirty, and oh my God. And I mean, this is another example. The solos on this record are just, Eddie was just going for it on every level on this album, and Top Jimmy is just a perfect example of that.
Yeah, the harmonic intro on this, like, this is an album that, I mean, it begs to be listened to with headphones. Now, I was working today, and I usually don't work with headphones on, so I just kind of playing it through my phone, and I'm like, this is not what this album sounds like. You know what I mean? Like this album you need to hear that panning. You need to hear, all those little accents and everything going on every instrument. And yeah, it seems like on this album, there's just a lot more clean sort of chording and harmonic things going on. There's not as much crunch. The crunch is still there, but when it is, I think it stands out a lot more dynamically. So I think this is the most dynamic album, to say.
Excellent word. Yeah.
And I don't know, do you know anything about the story? So I was a DJ in college, and there was a band called the Rhythm Pigs. And is it true that this is about one of the guys who was in that band? This song is actually about this other guy.
It was some band that David Lee Roth would go see, I think down in LA, called Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs.
Yeah. Okay. So that was them. Yeah. So I was a DJ on this overnight show, and we played like alternative music. And I remember playing a Rhythm Pigs thing. And then like, there's something on the album or on the vinyl, or I heard something later about, oh, has to do with, whatever. And I was like, huh? So
yeah, that's definitely where it came from. And Dave just loved these guys, so he's like, I'm going to immortalize them in a song. There's more to the story. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but yeah, it's definitely a band that he would go see. And to your point, I'm really glad you brought it up. This is a really dynamic album, and I never really thought about. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of flavors, but when you think about it, yeah, there's not a ton of that full blast amp to 11 crunch. I mean, you got Panama, Hot for Teacher, House of Pain we'll get to, but yeah, that's a really good point, man. I just think the guitar work on this one, like you notice like the harmonic intros or intro, excuse me. And obviously that breakdown is crazy, but I love the riff because it's, at the tail, at the end, it's this little jingle thing, and it is so cool, man. There's so much to listen to on this record, and this song to me, again, it's just, man, it just goes, and it's just catchy, and the choruses are great, and man, and to JG3's point, this is Michael Anthony's great on this song. Top Jimmy floats, voice is a little roach there, but yeah, this song is just so underrated. I even when I'm talking to like hardcore Van Halen fans, it does not come up that much, which really surprises me, because if I was ranking, Van Halen songs, this would be way high on my list.
Is a great comment by JG3. You don't realize that this is a 30. Well, Spotify says it's even less than that. It says it's 33:10, I think. This is a 35 minute album. I mean, does that blow your mind? Like, wait, what? That's it? That's all there is? Like, that seems so damn short.
He says it's a heck of a 35 minutes. For a short album, it's got a lot of sound. Yeah, it's... Well, I mean, to me, though, that's, like I said earlier, this is like a statement of intent by Eddie Van Halen. And I think this record just shows on every level why Eddie Van Halen was so much more than just a guitar god. These songs are fantastic. The production sounds great. There's, like, you use the perfect word, Brian. There's so many dynamics throughout this record, and like you guys just pointed out, it's not even 35 minutes. I mean, Eddie knew what he was doing on all levels. People use the word genius, and I would agree. I mean, it's unbelievable what the guy was able to accomplish, and this record. I mean, it's famous that he was staying up for 3 days at a time, just working on this for months and months and months, and poring over every detail, and he was whacked out on coke and booze like crazy. But I mean, he was bound and determined on this record. He's like telling everybody, like, I'm building my own studio because I know what Van Halen should be. I know what we should sound like. I believe in myself. I know damn well that I can write the songs I want to write. And he also had, and you know this, man, because you've written music before. There's a certain freedom you have when you don't give a shit what other people are going to think of it. And Eddie had that. He did not give a damn. He's like, I'm going to write what I want. I believe in it, and it's going to kick ass. This is what Van Halen is. And he was right. He was right. On every level, he was right, man. So, all right, what are you laughing at? I feel like I'm cutting you off from something.
No, well, first of all, Kale, I was laughing at Kale. We did a top 50 Van Halen songs for Dream Theater forums. I was trying to wrap my head around that. This was number 27 for me.
All right.
Thanks for a random thought, Kale.
Yeah, there we go.
No, JT3, this is a good point. Sometimes I wish artists nowadays wouldn't feel compelled to make 80 minutes of music, because it feels like albums would be tighter if they weren't more for it. We're not talking about Dream Theater, obviously, but yeah, there are a lot of bands and songs I hear where it's like, man, if you cut this 6.5 thing down to 4, this 5.5 to to 4.5, I totally agree with that on a lot of stuff like this. There is no wasted space on any of this album, man. It is just like every note counts. It all means something. And really, so we're looking at 8 songs if you don't include 1984, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? I mean, that's but it's 8 songs. So I was just thinking of something, and I don't know why it took till now to hit me, but 1984 and 5150 back to back, basically for Van Halen. Let's just say basically for Eddie, right? I mean, I don't know. I can't even fathom that. I just kind of because how much of a peak he was here, and then to take it even farther and have someone who could take it farther vocally like Sammy did. I don't know, man. Those 2 albums back to back, just hard pressed to find something that I don't even know what the word is.
It's
running out of
maybe?
superlatives.
Yeah, right.
Well, prolific, but groundbreaking, and
I mean,
and innovative.
I mean, obviously, at some point, maybe we could do a 5150 deep dive because you know me, I can deep dive all their records. But, real quick point on 5150, and we'll move on. But 5150, you can't really hear Roth on it, but if you take the vocals out, it still sounds like Van Halen. I mean, obviously people are going to say, well, why can't this be Love? And Love Walks In, that they're not, but a song like 5150 or Best of Both Worlds or Summer Nights are good enough. Roth could have sang over that. And, it's, you could hear Eddie, his writing progressed. Like he wrote, he's got other people in mind. And Roth was a genius at kind of putting melody and catchy stuff in spots where there really wasn't. Like if you take Panama, for example, sorry there, dude. It's that riff does not lend itself to a vocal harmony.
Right.
That's not something you can sing over. But when you listen to 5150, the chorus is the instrumentation is big. And there's space for it. Like he heard what Sammy could do and was like, okay, I could work with this. So he kind of wrote to Dave's strengths in that era, and then he wrote to Sammy's strengths in that era.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. So, all right. So moving on to Drop Dead Legs, which oddly enough to me, I mean, I like this song. But I had no idea there was this enormous fan love for it until their final tour in 2015 when they put it in the set list and everyone just went bonkers. I was like, I didn't know everybody loved Drop Dead Legs as much as they do. So, I mean, not much to say on this one, except for it's just a damn good tune. It's like a slow kind of, head-banging rocker. It's just a fun song, man.
Yeah, kind of a sleazy grinder. Sort of thing, and you got the, he's got the great bends going on and stuff,
yeah.
Perfectly placed, just real kind of sleazy and greasy, I don't know if it fits. You could see why Roth came up with the lyrics he did for it, because it fits the music,
Yeah. And it's, like I said, it's definitely a more simplistic song. But again, we talk about the multiple flavors on this record, and this is, again, it's simple like Jump, but it's in like kind of like a dirty, not bluesy, but almost in that kind of, jammy kind of vein in a way. And to the point where like one of my favorite Van Halen moments is the ride out solo on this song. And he's got like one of my, it's just this little tiny moment, but for some reason I've always loved, that solo because he's just kind of riffing. And I don't remember if that was a first take or not. I thought I read somewhere that it might have been, but don't quote me on that. But it's got this part in the middle, and I think you'll know what I'm talking about when it just goes like he just basically dumps the bar. It's like it's like he's fighting the guitar. It sounds like you're like choking a cat. I'm like, and he's just digging into that guitar and that, and I love it, man. There's so much attitude in it. So, I mean, it's a very simple tune, and it's just a fun song. And again, I didn't know there was this huge fan love for it until, everyone went bonkers when it appeared in the set list in 2015.
Well, I think if you got anything other than the hits from this, people are going to go nuts because they've heard those a million times. But an interesting comment here that agrees with you. Somebody named Chris Akin. Roth would have been fine on Good Enough. That one sounds like a Roth impression, which I think you said. Yeah, that definitely sounds like Roth. So thank you, Chris Akin.
Chris Akin. I could see that. I could definitely see that. That's but then again, like the Sammy Hagar haters would say, oh, that's so U.S. Prime, grade A stamp guaranteed, like that Sammy sucks at lyrics and da 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 da. So
yep.
Yeah. So JG3, yeah, he's whoa. What about Hot for Teacher? He's like, oh wait, I'm forgetting the track listing. Yeah, stick with us, Jay. And stick with me in particular. I know the only thing I will tell you I can definitely be certain that I know about it's Van Halen. Like I eat, sleep, and breathe that band pretty much. So, yeah, Drop Dead Legs is. I mean, I think it's the one song on the record that all the songs are great, but I think this is the one I'm like, yeah, it's a cool song. There's really not much to this one. For me, it's a cool groove. It's a cool song, and it rocks. That's all you can say.
Yep.
So let's flip the vinyl to side 2, and let's listen to a Lamborghini revving. So everybody knows that Panama features Eddie's Lamborghini, but Ted Templeman says in his book that the very beginning of Hot for Teacher is actually the Lamborghini as well, and that Don Landy recorded a whole bunch of it and specifically worked on getting the Simmons drums to sound like the exhaust and then time it all up so that it could kind of like blend.
Wow.
So yeah, supposedly that first rhythmic thing is actually the Eddie's Lamborghini revving, or the tailpipe. So, I mean, God, where do we begin with this song? This is just, I mean, the music video for this song is what made me want to actually play. Made me like, I'm like, I got to do this. I have to do it. Eddie Van Halen walking down that table in the library playing that solo. I was like, yeah, I was 8 years old. I'm like, life is over. That's what I'm doing. I have to be Eddie Van Halen. I have to do that. It's such a vivid memory to me. But yeah, this is, Kale mentioned it earlier. He said, wouldn't you say that Hot for Teacher is like what you would describe as quintessential Van Halen? And I'm going to say no, only because there's some weirdness to this song, and that's one of the reasons this song stands out so much, is because, both verses, half of it is that, heard you missed us, we're back. It's this goofy, I
love it.
Classroom thing, and it's fantastic, but it's, that's not what Van Halen's known for, I would say. I mean, in the Roth era, you could say, okay, well, it was fun, and it was creative, and it was interesting, but I think, that Panama is more what encapsulates what you're talking about when you think of like adjectives people use to describe Van Halen. That having been said, I think if you can't get into Hot for Teacher, you suck. And I apologize if I'm offending people by saying that, but this song fucking rules. Like, it's just, again, where do you start? Like the drums are slamming. It's, Alex Van Halen, doing the tick tack tick tack tick tack. It's not a straight double bass. He's doing triplets on the ride while he's doing it. And like you said, you love it. What do you think the teacher's going to look like this year? Like, no one's ever done something like that. It's like the, one break coming up moment on Fair Warning on steroids. And then you
Well,
combine it with the video, and you're just like, oh my God, it's a total package.
I'm trying to think too, though. Is there a song that starts guitar with the finger picking or the finger tapping like that? Going back to Eruption, I can't think of a song that just starts just with that, which I think makes it kind of unique too. Because like right away, you're like, okay, this is going to be Eruption mixed with Schools Out, mixed with Fast Times at Ridgemont High, like with 14 gallons of testosterone thrown in, like, you know what I mean? I mean, this is just like a man cave, dream, like, the way that guitar starts out, man, with all those incredible hammer-ons and stuff.
Yeah. Um, I'm gonna go guitar nerd on you here because I know other people will. I get what you're saying, like it's like a tapping solo, like
Right.
Eruption, but there's other songs where he does tapping in the intro. Like, I mean, most notably, I'm thinking of like Women in Love, like dun, 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 dun.
Yeah,
Like
but is that more
that's
harmonic though?
it is, but people
Yeah,
are gonna
this is
like
the full
again,
out, like,
yeah.
this is the full out sound though, like of like what you remember from Eruption, which is I think what makes it kind of like, I don't want to say a callback, but I do feel in a way it almost is like, hey, remember I can do this, and I'm
Well,
gonna start the song like this, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. JG3 says, my opinion is Hot for Teacher is a perfect song, and that is that. You're not wrong. I mean, you are not, and it's a perfect video. This is like that like perfect storm of just everything working out. And back to your point, Brian. No, I totally understand what you're saying, and I don't think there ever really was anything like that. And I mein, what a way to start a song. You got Alex's drums. You're like, what the hell? It's like a drum solo.
right,
Then you get Eddie coming and doing the stuff that you love the most.
right.
And then it kicks in that nasty like riff, and it's like that boogie shuffle thing. You're going,
Yeah.
holy shit. Like, what the hell? And then you get that weird verse and again, David Lee Roth, like just those goofy lyrics that just seem to work. Like it's for as stupid as it sounds, it's incredibly intelligently written. It's people can relate to it, and what a goddamn song, man. What were your impressions the first time you heard this song?
Oh my God, what do I think the teacher's going to look like this year?
I don't feel tardy.
Yeah. No, so like, okay, how many people have looked up what does the chick from the video look like now? I'm guessing probably, none of us look that good anymore. I'm just curious, like, man, what a video. Like, I mean, I'm trying to think, because like, obviously I played the album before the video came out, but I don't know that the song hit until you saw that video. Hit me
Right.
the same way. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just obvious. Like, okay, you can hear it and go, that's great, that's funny, it's Davey. And then you see the video and you're like, oh my Lord, like, not just because of the girl in it was super hot, but just, I don't know, it was just funny the way that the whole, like you said, Eddie's like, doing like, and it wasn't quite a Chuck Berry duck walk, but like doing that walk down the desks or whatever he was doing with the guitar in his hand, this and that. And
Yep.
like I said, I just think it's just like, it's just Van Halen like on speed almost. Like, I mean, it's taking it all the way to the cliff and almost going over. Is that her nowadays? Oh,
yeah. Sorry to cut you off, but you asked. There she is. Yeah, that was last year.
Wow.
So that's Miss I think it's sex ed or something like that, or phys ed. So that's the gym teacher.
Right.
So
nice.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah,
it's like almost getting cartoony, to the point, but it's tongue in cheek enough that it's funny, and it's so insanely good musically that you can't like not take it seriously. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's pushing the envelope about as far as humanly possible for almost being corny, but it's still amazing. Like,
well, and it's like no other band could really get away with it. Van Halen was known for that campiness, and Eddie's shredding and everything, and Dave doing his thing. So I think they're the perfect band to do something like that, because you're JG3, is she still teaching? Nice. There's a joke there. I'll just leave it alone. But yeah, I think when you hear something like that from Van Halen at this time, you're like, oh, ha ha ha, David Lee Roth, he's such a character. Whereas if you get something like that out of, like you brought up, let's say Rat, and they put this on Out of the Cellar, you're like, what the hell is that? Dokken, like what? Huh? Like it just doesn't fit. And you're like, to your point, like it does get campy, it does get cheesy, but because it's Van Halen, it doesn't. So,
well, and I talked before too, like about the selling of this album, but especially that song. Like, I'm just curious, like, would that song have the same impact if there wasn't a video? I think the answer is pretty obvious on that one. I don't know. To me, it is, but maybe I could be wrong.
Well, I think it's a microcosm of your point. The song itself is fantastic and would have sold, but the video is like this little mini movie, and I mean, it's kids in high school, for Christ's sakes, like who at that time could not relate to having the hot teacher and being like, oh my God, like it played right into their core audience. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It was just awesome. So, fun fact, by the way, about the video. Did you know that the actor that played mini Alex Van Halen was the little bully in A Christmas Story?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. Yep. I think it was I forget. I love A Christmas Story. I can't.
So not Farkas, but the other one, the shorter.
Yeah, not Scott Farkas. What's his name? Like Grover Dill. I think Grover Dill.
Okay.
Look. Okay. See, Sarcasmo Asholio. Good to see you, man. Says DLR said that his least favorite Dream Theater album is Falling Into Infinity. We haven't seen you in how long, and that's what you're gonna lead with. All right. Yeah, but something I mentioned earlier, Brian, about this being the album being a complete statement of intent by Eddie Van Halen. I think this song is the perfect example of it. It's the guitar is just off the chain. The arrangement is completely weird, and he's like, "Screw it, let's do this goofy, kooky thing." And it turned out to be not only a classic Van Halen song, but one of the most classic, hard rock songs ever. Who doesn't know Hop for Teacher?
Well, it got a whole second life too when the Guitar Hero thing was a big deal. Like there was a whole generation of kids that like they didn't know what the hell Hot for Teacher was.
Yeah, good point. All right, so moving on, we have another synth track, but this is If Jump is the sunny side of the street, I'll Wait is the side of the street in shadows. So again, another just straight ahead like synth rocker, I believe the term would be. And man, this is another song I think that is underrated, but I'm glad they threw it in on all the tours. Once Wolfgang got in the band, they were playing. I thought it was a really cool addition. It was kind of like a deep track. Again, this is one of those songs I think would have been a bigger hit and more recognized if it was on one of the other records, because I think it's catchy, the groove is there, and it's that darker side of Van Halen that, like, for example, this song would have fit perfectly, I think, on Fair Warning. It's got that, kind of, it's not very upbeat, but man, it moves. So I could easily see this on Fair Warning. So I love it. I know that this. Okay, I want to get your opinion on this. Do you think this might be the most divisive song on 1984? I think this is the only song that fans might ever really debate as to whether or not they like it. What do you think?
I can see that. It is absolutely my favorite Van Halen song of all time. I think I'm going to disagree when you said something kind of like straight ahead. I think this thing is anything but straight ahead with the chord voicings, the keyboard sounds he gets. Like I remember hearing this and like, how the hell do you get your keyboard to sound like that and get all these cool sounds out of it? And like, how do you get it to fit a Van Halen song? You know what I mean? If they have to sing over it, it's not like I just never, it's not going to be up there with, what we heard on the first album, obviously, in terms of innovation, but I had never heard anything like this. And I don't think it gets anywhere near the credit for for what it is. And you made a good point though about, it's the dark side, this the dark alley, the dark side of the street or whatever. And I was trying to listen to this again a few times. Like, am I right? There is no guitar until you get almost to the chorus. Basically, it sounds like it's all keyboards. I don't think there is.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any guitar in there at all, which is very, I don't know that they have another song that does that, because even all of the keyboard heavy stuff on 5150, the guitar's playing a rhythm almost all the time, at least.
I mean, the only thing you could really kind of compare it to, and this is a weird comparison because unless you're like a Van Halen aficionado, I think the only one you can really bring up is When the Cradle Will Rock, because that whole song, I mean, there's the guitar solo in the middle, but the rest of it is not guitar. It's a Wurlitzer electric piano run through his Marshalls. So unless you know that's what's happening, I don't think you would know that, that's what you're listening to. So, yeah, I mean, good point. This is kind of an anomaly in the Van Halen catalog. I think, man, see, I'm sure now you got me going through the whole catalog to try and find out if there's another one, and I can't think of one. So this is one of your top Van Halen songs, huh?
It's my favorite. Yeah, this I'd probably put this one in Mean Streets too. But yeah, this is just so unique. There's nothing else in the catalog that sounds. We've talked this before about Dream Theater, and there's ones that just nothing that sounds like it at all. There isn't a song anywhere to me that sounds remotely like this that they've done. And I don't know, I love it. It's weird, like you said. It's like dark, but then it's like the chorus comes in, and you're like humming along, and you're kind of feeling good too. I don't know, you're feeling good about feeling bad. I don't know. It sounds dumb, but there's a dichotomy there for sure. But man, it's just kill. I mean, Roth's melodies on these, I don't know. So did he write all the vocal melodies too then?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I mean, his vocal melodies on this are off the charts. I love what he does on this one.
Well, I'm going to correct what I just said. On the record, the writing credits go to David Lee Roth for this one and Van Halen. However, do you know who actually should have gotten songwriting credit for I'll Wait? Do you know this?
I do not know that.
Mike McDonald of the
from
Doobie
Doobie
Brothers.
Brothers?
Yeah.
Wow.
So again, I was listening to Ted Teppelman's book and Noel Monk's book today, and basically what happened was Eddie and Alex had this the keyboard riff for I'll Wait sitting around for a while, and they were messing with it, and they couldn't come up with anything, and David Lee Roth was not into the keyboard stuff. Ted Templeman wasn't either. And Ted tells a story that they had it for a while, and Dave went to Ted and said, "Hey, do you think Mike McDonald would work on this with me?" He's like, "Holy crap, yeah, let me ask him." And they had never met, but they got together, and Michael McDonald came up with, helped with the lyrics and obviously the melodies and stuff like that, and turned it from just kind of like a jam thing into like a full finished piece. And Mike McDonald and Ted Templeman were really tight because they did all the Doobie stuff together. And Ted said that when they went on the road, like they would room together, and they actually would like hang out socially and all kinds of stuff. They were really good friends. And that this really damaged their relationship because when the record came out, Van Halen did not credit Mike McDonald. And he was pissed as hell. And Ted said that it really damaged their relationship. So, yeah, Mike McDonald of the Doobie Brothers is actually the one that's responsible for making I'll Wait what it is. So
Interesting.
So, yeah. All kinds of factoids. So I may not be able to pronounce Panama, but I know other stuff.
I know the guy from the Doobie Brothers had something to do with this.
Look, man, I've been thinking it was Moog, a Moog keyboard for. Now we know it's Moog. So for all we know, maybe it is the Doobie Brothers.
Well, I allegedly play keyboards, and I've said Moog for years too. So I guess I didn't know either.
Yeah, but I'm an idiot. You're not. You actually have a clue on where music's concerned. So
apparently not. If I said Moog.
Kale, such good photography. Yep. That's definitely a Rothism added to some Mike McDonald stuff. JG3 says, Atomic Punk is one of my favorite Van Halen songs. It's not on this album, we're aware, but I'm just throwing it out there. I feel it gets underrated a bit like this song. Can anything on the first record really be underrated? I mean, Van Halen 1 is one of the greatest rock records ever and definitely one of the greatest debut albums of all time. So I don't think anything on there really gets underrated except for maybe Little Dreamer. So
I don't know if I agree with you on that either. I don't agree with either of you. I think either of them are underrated. Both great songs, though.
JG3, one more and we'll move on. He said, JG3 says, I actually said timbre in a college vocal class instead of timbre. Yep. Hey, you know what? Jay? Tons of people do that, so don't feel bad. So that's actually not as rare as you think, so you're safe. All right, so let's move on to a quintessential Van Halen boogie. And I mentioned Alex Van Halen's right hand going nuts earlier, and this is the song that gave him the biggest workout, Girl Gone Bad. Again, I think it's an underrated song. I think a cool way to listen to 1984 is to take Jump, Panama, and Hot for Teacher out and listen to what's left. And I think what you're going to find is there are some absolutely kick-ass songs that you don't really think about because those other three are such monoliths. And they are so legendary, not only in just the Van Halen catalog, but in classic rock, in the classic rock catalog. And Girl Gone Bad just moves, and again, it's one of those boogies like, and it's just this song just goes. I love this one, man. Where do you stand on Girl Gone Bad?
I love the intro on this. It's incredible guitar intro, and I love that and then there's like kind of that descending part where it almost sounds like the guitar's like laughing, and it's like it sounds like it literally sounds like it's giggling the way he's making the thing. I don't know, it's just weird. Like I don't know where he comes up with this stuff, but yeah, I mean the last two songs on here, it's kind of like, man, how did Dave even figure out how to get vocals in these? Because it's not all that easy, you know what I mean? Like
right.
Like, how did you even come, because he probably was like, man, we got these straight ahead kind of singles, and then I got to try to figure out something over this. But yeah, I mean, like I said, underrated, I guess, just because it's hard to say underrated. I think it's maybe undervalued is the same thing. The deal with it is the people that are like the true hardcore fans are going to gravitate towards these, and the ones that like, I just bought the album because it had Jump and I wanted to hear Panama, and then I had Hot for Teacher. I guarantee you, as soon as I'll Wait is done, they took the needle off the album. There's probably, literally probably 2 million people that bought the album did that, which is fine. I mean, they sold an extra 2 million albums, but let's be real here. Let's be honest. There wasn't 10 million diehard hardcore Van Halen fans that listen to this front. That's just not how people consume music back then, especially.
Yeah, no, totally agree. That's an interesting point to think about. If, man, were people pissed off after hearing I'll Wait? I wonder if they're like, okay, well, we got 1984 and Jump, that's enough keyboards, and they get another one like, God damn it, like especially after Hot for Teacher, when you've just gotten your face melted. Man, like that's a good point. I bet that would be the reaction. Like, I really wish I could be there when stuff like this could have been there back in 1984 to talk about this record with fans and see what their reaction really was. Because
I was too young to probably, like I said, I was only 16 at the time. Well, still, I guess when this came out, I was still actually 15. But I don't know if there was. I'm sure there had to be a pretty decent amount of pushback on Jump, like you're saying before.
And yet it was their only number one hit, man.
Yeah.
Girl Gone Bad is like one of those songs that never gets talked about. And yet it's, I always thought it was cool that they teased it at the US Festival. They had that jam on it. And like, I haven't ironically I haven't watched the US Festival that many times. And I don't remember if I think it was part of his guitar solo or if they just did a jam because they were also drunk off their off their asses that who knows where they threw it in. But I remember that they jammed on it, and I have to imagine that as a Van Halen fan, if they're doing that, you're like, oh, this rocks. It's just kind of cool. And yet you didn't know you were hearing part of the new record at that time. They were in the studio working on 1984 at the time of the US Festival. So, this song is just, God, this song moves. This is one of those songs, you've got Top Jimmy, you've got Hot for Teacher, and you've got this one that they just absolutely kick your ass in terms of like tempo and the, Alex Van Halen, again, the right, he's not just, halftime and the hi-hat with the, he's like, kind of a normal hard rock band, the guitar would be doing jin, 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 that kind of thing. But Alex takes that over on this record with his right hand and the hi-hat. So your earlier point about his hi-hat work is very astute, and I think it's really, really on display, on this record. All right, look, JG3, you tuned in a little bit late. He says, Ride the Lightning was another big album that came out that year. Yeah, Brian went through a list of like 12 bangers, dude. Like, when you get a second when we're done, go back and listen to the beginning. Like, you wouldn't believe all the stuff that came out. Like,
or you
man,
can see it on there too.
Yep. Kale McLeish says, was it actually the US Festival? I always thought it was said as the U.S. Festival, like the United States Festival. No, he's not wrong.
Stuff now.
No, I've heard people. I've heard people say that. No, it is the US Festival. Okay, like us, like me and you, us. So yeah, that is correct. So, all right. So to close the record, Brian, Eddie Van Halen goes back to the well, the 1976 well, all the way back to the Gene Simmons demos for a reworked version of House of Pain, which to me has one of the nastiest, never talked about Van Halen riffs ever. That absolutely rules. I love House of Pain. I mean, to me, it sounds like an unfinished song. There's something weird about it that feels unfinished, but I still love it. It's just it's wonky. It's a really cool ending to a really cool album. You know what I mean? I love it. What do you think about House of Pain?
I did not know the history of behind that, so thanks for sharing that. This really reminds me of Fair Warning, big time.
Yes, I could hear that.
Yeah, I mean, it's that dirty, grimy, chunky, back alley, mean streets, dirty movies, Unchained sound. I don't know, maybe Unchained's a little more upbeat, but yeah, to me, this unfinished, I think, is a good word. It sounds like, because some of the stuff on Fair Warning's a little bit wonky too. You get some weird little things on there too. Yep. So I think it would fit right at home on there. But I did not know that this was originally a demo off of the from the original demo they recorded, I guess.
Yeah, Eddie, I mean, he went back to the well of the early stuff a lot. I mean, he had so much material recorded that I could go through a huge list of stuff that legendary Van Halen songs that were actually recorded years and years before. And, the Gene Simmons demos, God, it was... I should know this, but I'm just going to say between 10 and 15 songs, but it was a lot of stuff that would show up on later records, stuff that show up on the first record, and then some, things that are now like fan rarities. But yeah, Eddie was, he went, and again, Van Halen nerds know this, but Eddie went back to his prior well of songs all the time for inspiration. To the point where She's the Woman. Let me think if I got this right. There's a song that they did that was originally the middle section to Mean Street, and they ripped it out and did a whole nother middle section. And I'll remember it at some point. I know what I'm talking about, but he would take little parts out of songs and just repurpose them into whole new bits. It's basically like how we talked about Hell's Kitchen on Falling Into Infinity was actually supposed to be the middle part of Burning My Soul. I mean, there's an example of that in a Van Halen tune. It was, I believe it was She's the Woman. And that was supposed to be like the middle part of Mean Street. So I'm getting the story convoluted at this point, but Van Halen fans will know what I'm talking about. But yeah, and House of Pain was one of the earliest things they ever recorded, and it appeared as the last track on the last Roth record. So, and it is reworked. I mean, that's the one thing, is like none of the stuff that he pulled from, at least not much of it, was exactly like it was in 1976 or whatever. But, a lot of this is intact. And one last time, man, that boogie in the middle, that guitar solo, holy crap. That's just it. I love when they do that, because, I mean, it reminds me, it's kind of ironic in a way. If you go to Balance in 1995, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
yep,
the song "Feelin'" at the end, it's the last song on Balance, and it's a slower tune, but for the solo, it's like a slower tune that picks up with this boogie for a solo, and then goes back into the slower part. And House of Pain does the exact same thing. So it's always been ironic to me that both eras of the band ended with a song that has the same feature. So I've always thought that's pretty cool. So House of Pain, again, it's we talked about how the 1984 record has a ton of flavors, and House of Pain itself has a ton of flavors. So does this song stand out to you at all, or is this kind of just like, all right, it's 2.5 minutes, the record's over, see you later?
I think it's a little weird way to end the album, but I think it probably gets, this is going to sound lame, but it maybe gets a little more credit than it probably should, just because, well, it's the last song Roth ever did with them, basically. You can, if you want to count Different Kind of Truth, fine. But in the heyday, rather, this is the last song he did. And it seems maybe a little out of place on this album to me. You know what I mean? It seems like a weird way to end it. Like, I don't know. If you just kind of just go track by track, you're like, I'm not saying I don't love it. I think it's a little strange, and maybe gets a little bit nostalgic. Okay, well, it's like I said, it's the last Dave song, and it's an older song they redid. I don't know. It feels a little bit weird.
Okay.
All that being said, but
okay.
So I have a question for you. I'm totally confused on the interviews with Wolfgang, where it's like, well, or then Eddie Trunk's like, well, there's 3 million hours of recorded stuff, but then like Wolfgang or whoever is like, yeah, but they never did, like, there's really isn't songs there, but then it's like, well, yeah, there is. I have to go through them. It's like, well, which is it? Are there a bunch of songs, riffs in there that were never used on albums, or is it just like outtakes or you know what I mean? Like, because if there is all of this hours and hours, then surely it can't all be 17 versions of Jump, right? I mean, I'm just confused on the whole thing. I don't understand. Like, it feels like there's mixed messages coming on. Is there other stuff or not?
So there's a ton of like jamming that I know.
So that's just Eddie playing by himself, or Eddie playing with Alex, or
all of it. I mean, the guy lived in the studio, man. Like, that's what he did. I mean, he would just play and hit record. And I mean, you could even see it in promotional videos. Like, there's one, I want to say it's for the Sharon album, like MTV, like he brought, it might have been Kurt Loder.
I saw the Kurt Loder one, yeah.
Yeah, well, if you look at the walls and stuff, if you look behind him, you'll see just miles of these tape reels. And so there's tons of that, but there are also songs that are finished, or at least mostly finished. Sammy always talked about a song called Between Us Two that they were working on at the same time that they were working on Humans Being for Twister. And they did it with Glenn Ballard. So there's a bunch of stuff, like if you go I'm on the spot, man. Like, I feel under pressure. But I know there's a couple songs from the Roth era that just were too. I know one was quoted to be like just too dumb. It was just too straight ahead and just too straight ahead in heavy metal and like whatever.
Yeah.
So that might be in there if they were working on it at that time. So there are a bunch of songs like that, but I think most of it is ideas and solos and reworked versions of things. But I mean, like I said, the guy was such a prolific writer. I mean, I hate to keep referencing the Ted Templeman book, but he said that one of the problems that they had was getting Eddie to stop writing during the making of this record, 1984. He wouldn't stop. He'd be like, "Oh, look at this thing I came up with," and Ted had to finally be like, "Look, dude, like, you gotta stop." Like that was why Ted Templeman and Don Landy were like a team for all of Ted Templeman's career, and then they get to this one, and Don is getting all messed up on coke and booze with Eddie, and they became incredible friends because Don helped him build 5150 and brought the gear in and wired it up and everything. And Don saw that Eddie was at this creative peak of coming up with ideas and doing all this incredible stuff, and instead of telling him, "Hey, we got a record to make, let's batten down the hatches, let's focus," he's like, "Yeah, let's go, man, right? Yeah, let's work on that, let's do this." And so that was one of the big sticking points on this record, was that Ted was coming from a label perspective because he was a senior vice president at Warner Brothers on top of being a producer. And so he's worried about budgets and time frames as well as being creative. But Don was like getting all whacked out on booze and coke and just going, and he could see what was happening. He's like, Eddie Van Halen is coming up with some absolutely legendary stuff. I'm not, imagine it's a faucet. He's like, I'm not turning the faucet off. I'm not doing it. Like,
Yeah.
This has to continue. So that was where a lot of the headbutting came in terms of the, the creation of this album. So in terms of what's in there, I would have to think that it'll come out at some point, at least some of it, but I don't think it's going to be for quite a while. But I think at some point, I mean, it has to, doesn't it? I mean, they can't just let it sit there. I mean, at some point, Alex is going to sit there, and then he's going to bring in Wolfgang, and they're going to be hearing some stuff going, man, could you imagine we just like put out a box set of Eddie and like, oh, because they know that fans like me, if you put out like, here's outtake 748, like I'll go, oh, that became Little Dreamer, or ooh, that became Feels So Good on OU812, but this was recorded in 1974. Like, people will pay for that, especially if it's something really cool. I don't think they're just gonna go, here's a bunch of wanking for 6 hours, give us $500.
Yeah, a couple things. So interesting point you made about how he had all these ideas and they wanted him to stop. Like, is it weird that it's only 33 minutes on the album? Like, couldn't you cram another couple songs on there, for one? But I don't know. It seems like Wolfgang is like, look, I'm doing my own thing here. Like, the amount of time and hours and it would take to go through all that for, I don't know. I don't think it's going to be done before. Unless Alex is really on board with getting it done, wants to get it done. It might not even happen before he dies even. I don't know.
Well, Wolfgang has said many times that as much as people want to believe that like he's now the caretaker of the Van Halen brand, that it is Alex.
Right.
And, when you read the history of Van Halen, I mean, Alex was the driving force for a lot of, it really wasn't until Eddie got really messed up that he decided that he kind of wanted to take over. Because even when he was all, whacked out on drugs and booze, like I say for 1984 and 5150 and stuff like that, he took over creatively and all that, but Alex really was the one that kept them on the business path. And, he was more focused on that side of things, that he was kind of the driving force. And, let's be honest. I mean, Eddie was the little brother, and don't we all, if we have big brother, kind of inherently, you always kind of take a backseat to your big brother? I know I do. I mean, I got a big brother who's, basically your age. So, they always had that dynamic. And so it's really going to be at Alex's discretion. And Wolfgang obviously is going to defer to his uncle because he defers to the history of the band.
Yeah.
So, and he knows that, he's a part of the history of the band, but Alex is the history of the band. So I think that's where it's going to come from, you know. JG3, he says, so there's hope, maybe. Yeah, I really don't think that we've seen the end of what we're going to get, at least, you know, in terms of Van Halen recordings. I mean, it's not going to be anything new, obviously, but you know, I just wish they could get their shit together to do like an Eddie Van Halen tribute, but obviously David Lee Roth is completely getting in the way of that, which is just staggering to me. But
I don't know. I don't want to see it. I have no desire to see that. To me, it just sounds like maybe if, you know, Sammy and everybody like, why can't Sammy just do it without, like, they don't need Dave. Who cares? Like,
well, Sammy's already doing it. I mean, he plays a whole bunch of Van Halen stuff in his solo shows.
I know.
I mean, wouldn't you want to see? I mean, Wolfgang just said it like less than a week ago. He's like, look at Foo Fighters. Like, they can get their shit together to do these two massive, you know, tribute concerts to Taylor Hawkins. Like, notice how Van Halen can't get one together for Eddie Van Halen.
I guess my thing on it is it's not going to be like you're on board as thinking the Pantera thing is cool, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's not going to be like that. Like, they're not going to play the cool stuff. Like, they're not going to play the stuff that, like, you know, the hardcore fans want. I don't want to see Dave get up there and try to play Talking About Love or try to sing. I don't know. I just don't have any desire to see that. I don't know. It's just me, because I know he can't sing it anymore. And then if they get a bunch of different people to come up there and sing that stuff that I've heard 8 million times, I don't think it. I don't know how to word this. I don't think it really pays tribute to Eddie. I think it's just a bunch of clowns getting up there. Like, we all know Eddie's amazing. Like, maybe figure out a better way of doing it, I guess. Figure out some way to do it. I don't know what that entails, but
so
do you follow what I'm seeing or no?
Yeah, I do. But I mean, think about those two Taylor Hawkins tribute shows. I mean, no offense to Taylor Hawkins, so that's not where I'm coming from this, so please no one take offense to this, but if you can get two shows of that size together for the drummer of Foo Fighters, how in God's name can you not get something like that together for probably the greatest rock guitarist of all time? I mean, Taylor Hawkins was amazing. Great personality, great stage presence, you know, one half of, you know, Foo Fighters, which is a huge band, absolutely huge. But you don't see like almost every drummer on the planet walking around being influenced by Taylor Hawkins some way or another. Eddie Van Halen, everybody that's picked up the instrument and plays rock of some form is influenced by Eddie Van Halen in some way or another. And yet they can't get something together. And it's like, the whole thing is just infuriating to me, man. Like, I get where you're coming from. You don't want to see a bunch of people hacking it up and all that, but it's like, I want to see something. And you know what's one of the main reasons I want to see it? And this is going to be incredibly petty on my part, but David Lee Roth is such a cock. I want to see it happen just to spite that guy. How big of an ego do you have to where a guy like Eddie Van Halen passes away and you were lucky enough to play with this guy, and yet you're the one being a pissant and a roadblock, clogging up the works in terms of booking a show that is a tribute to the guy? How can you have such an incredibly sized ego that you can't put that aside for 1 or 2 nights to let the world kiss that guy's ass? Because let's face it, as much as everyone loved Dave and everything, Eddie was the band. Everyone kissed his ass more than Roth's anyways.
Well, I think mentally there's stuff going on with Roth. I think he's kind of lost it a while ago.
Like in 1978?
No, but you know what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. I just think he's an old guy. It's just like, I don't think he has the energy for something like this. And he doesn't have the energy, and he doesn't have the interest to do it justice. And he probably kind of knows that. So I'm not gonna sit here and applaud him or give him credit for that, but I will in a sense.
Better not.
I think he honestly does not have the energy to do something like that and to be a part of it, or to know how to take direction to do it. And like, I don't think that Wolfgang wants to orchestrate it, and Alex's personality is not so that he can be the one to orchestrate it either, if you follow me. So I think that's kind of where the whole problem is.
I'm
Like-
going to disagree with you 1,000,000%. Dave doesn't want to get out there on stage and have it actually, he's been avoiding it his whole life, the fact that the band was Eddie and not him. Not his stupid frog croaking shit ass that's been absolutely putrid for the last 15 years. Not, his crappy solo career, which was good for 1.5 records. Eat 'Em and Smile was good, half of Skyscraper, and then it was trash afterwards. It was proven that he was not the band when every Sammy record went #1. Roth's career went in the toilet while Eddie was still kicking ass. He doesn't want to get up on stage and have that actually the whole world see it, even though the whole world already knows it. It's his ego. It's not that he can't do it. What the fuck does he care? Did you hear him on those last couple tours? It sounded like somebody hitting an animal on the road. It sounded like the noise a raccoon makes when you run over it. He was terrible. Like he's going to give a shit about sounding terrible for 2 shows in tribute to Eddie Van Halen? No. It's not all about him. He doesn't want the spotlight off of him, so he's being a cock about it. I'm sorry to be an ass, but especially today, like, man, fuck David Lee Roth. Van Halen's about Eddie Van Halen. Fuck David Lee Roth. At least Sammy Hagar, say what you want about him. I love the guy personally, and he's talked a lot of shit in his book, which maybe he shouldn't have, but at least we get some stories, which is good. It's entertaining, whatever. At least he acknowledges the greatness of Eddie. It's like, yeah, I'd do a tribute to Eddie anytime. He admitted that Eddie was the center of the damn band. He admitted Eddie's greatness. Dave is always like, no, not him. It's me. It's about me. I'm Diamond Dave. Fuck you, dude. I'm just pissed because I could get one last time to go see a tribute to Eddie, and I'm never gonna fucking get it because David Lee Roth is an asshole, an egotistical piece of shit.
But you're kind of proving my point. Is they don't need Dave to do it.
But they can't do it without him.
Why? Why can't they just do it with Sammy?
Dude, you can't ignore half of the legacy.
Then fucking go get I don't know, the dude from Atomic Punks or whoever the hell. Get someone
Get
else.
Michael Starr, yes.
I mean, seriously, get whoever to sing the Dave stuff. Like, I honestly, like, who cares? I don't know. The name is Van Halen. It's not David Lee Roth. Like their name is on the album. His bloodline is now, selling albums out the wazoo. He's an incredible talent. I just don't think they don't need David Lee Roth. That's why I'm saying, like, they're farting around hoping Roth or trying to, and I don't think that's why I don't think it's going to get done, because they're screwing around with Roth. They don't need to, and I don't think Alex can take it on his own to do it unless he just goes to Wolfgang and says, hey, let's just do it without Dave. That's what I think, because I don't think Dave needs to be there, honestly. He hasn't been in the band since basically whenever. I'm not going to count that 2012 piece of crap that you love so much. I mean, you admitted he sucked live anyway. Like, he has not been in the band since. Dude, he has not been in the band since 1984, literally. As far as I'm concerned, he hasn't done anything good with the band since 1984. So why make this guy that everyone can't stand be the reason they can't do this? That to me makes no sense. That's all. I'm saying.
We have a new cage match, and it's me versus you, and the album is A Different Kind of Truth. We're doing it.
A different kind of turd.
Oh, up your ass. Up your ass. Oh my God.
You've had how many bottles of that stuff now?
I had one, you dick. Oh my God.
Give me Van Hagar with Wolf on guitar.
Yeah.
Wolf of Nature.
Yeah, Wolf of Nature. I wanted to bring that up. He says, give me Van Hagar with Wolf on guitar. Dude, I would pay all kinds of money to see that. Sammy Hagar can still bring it. Even if he's tuned like a half step or a full step down, his show is still entertaining as hell. He sounds great. It's just, I would love to see that. I would love it. I mean, obviously it's never going to happen, but wow. Yeah, dude, I can't believe you're shitting on A Different Kind of Truth like that. We're going to do that. We're going to do it. Me and you, we're going to go. Seriously, Seriously, you who kissed the ass of a dramatic turn of events, you're gonna tell me that
Oh
you know?
God! Don't even
Oh,
try. Bro.
oh, you know
Don't
what?
even try.
I'm
Don't
going.
do it.
I'm going to count the number of tracks on both those records, and maybe we'll have a Van Halen versus Dream Theater cage match.
Oh my God!
It'll be me and a different kind of truth versus you and a dramatic turn of events.
Yeah, you just got destroyed.
My ass.
Well, we're only 2 hours into the show. We should probably wrap this up.
That's all right. That's all right. It's a Van Halen thing. So, yeah, dude, this was awesome. This was a total blast. First of all, thank you for letting me do this. I mean, this literally is the most influential record of my life. I hated music until I heard this album. I mean, I'll make this super short if I can. My brother's 9 years older than me, so when this came out, I was 8. He was 17. He was babysitting me, took me across the street where his best friend lived, and he wanted to smoke weed, so he put me down in the basement because they had a bumper pool table that I was fascinated with, so he knew that, he could just put me down there to play pool, and he could go smoke weed. Well, they got tied up and everything, locked the door, so I was stuck in the basement with this big stereo and a bumper pool table and all this cool shit. And I got bored playing bumper pool, so I was like, I'll listen to music. So they had this huge system, and I picked up this tape, and it said Van Halen 1984. And I went, Van, God damn it. That's like, Ludwig van Beethoven. That's what my dad listens to. I hate it. But I had nothing better to do, so I popped it in. And like I say, the 1984, the intro came on, the synth track. And I was like, it's just like that Mannheim Steamroller stuff Dad listens to, whatever. Then the riff to Jump comes in. I was like, what? And the drums come in. I'm like, what the hell is this? Then the guitar solo hit, and I was like, oh my God, what is that? What is that? Oh my God. Then when Panama hit, my head just exploded. And so I went through the tape a number of times to the point where I wasn't knocking on the door to get out like I was a couple hours before, like my brother to come get me. He's like, what the hell are you doing? And I was just completely hooked on Van Halen, and I never, ever looked back. And I would go up in my brother's room when he wasn't around. I'd root through his tapes, and I found Ultimate Sin by Ozzy, which is still my favorite Ozzy record. He had Shout at the Devil, VOA, and all this stuff. And I mean, and to this day, every time I listen to 1984, I feel like that little kid. I feel just this innocence, and it's just I have those feelings of how I felt when I heard it the first time. And this record is a roadmap for me. So I especially a day like today, Brian, like we said earlier 2 hours ago, Eddie is my hero in a number of ways. And, to be able to talk about the most influential record of my life on our show is really cool. And I appreciate you letting me do it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I especially enjoyed looking back and seeing all the albums that came out then. And, it kind of almost like you, this was, it's not necessarily the album, but this was the year that music really just kind of kicked full gear in for me, for just kind of getting my hands on just about everything that I could find that was, rock, metal, whatever, and sort of shaped my taste for life, basically. So yeah, it was awesome, man. I enjoyed it, and looking forward to our next show, which is going to be about something we'll figure out.
Yep. So yeah, we are back here live, guys, in 2 weeks. It'll be on Thursday, October 20th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at all our usual locations: Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the cmsnetwork.com. So please jump in the chat with us as you did tonight. KLJG3, Wolf by Nature, good to see you, man. Good to meet you. Hopefully you tune in again sometime. Great to see all you guys. So please come hang out with us. Don't forget, we have our fan hangout on Friday, December 30th. We've already got a few people lined up to jump on, Brian, which is really cool. So if you want to jump on and co-host the show with us on camera, just send an email to talkingintoinfinity@gmail.com, and we'd be more than happy to have you guys on. So, Brian, I will see you in 2 weeks. And again, thank you very much for giving me 2 hours to pontificate about my favorite band. So, man, I know I'll talk to you before then, but I'll see you in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, since we didn't get to it tonight, we have to give a quick recap of the Dio documentary that we saw last week, because it is absolutely phenomenal. Yep. So we'll do that to kick off next show on October 20th. So until that time, he is my very good friend Brian. I am John, and guys, as usual, Carpe Diem.